Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is highly focused, and well, I think it's fair to say it's a little uncomfortable.
It is. We're diving into a concept that it's just so fundamental how we interact. It's the ultimate conversation ender, really.
This unchallengeable fortress in almost any argument, we're talking about subjective experience.
That's right. We're looking at the absolute power we grant to that one single phrase. The one you hear when all the logic and all the data get pushed aside.
I know it is so because I have experienced it.
Exactly that.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. When someone uses that phrase, it's usually not coming from a place of, open inquiry.
Not at all. It almost always surfaces right in the middle of a conflict.
Right. You've laid out your case, you've presented some facts, maybe some, statistical probabilities, and the response you get is just a story. A single, highly personal anecdote.
And that's a total change in the rules of engagement, isn't it?
Completely. The conversation just shifts on its axis.
It does. That subjective experience, it instantly becomes what our sources call an absolute shield. And the reason it's so powerful, I think, is that it's structurally unchallengeable.
You can't refute it.
You can't. You can't argue with someone's lived reality. You can't deny their pain. You can't say the event didn't happen to them. It's untouchable.
And what we're really digging into today is how that shield it ends the dialogue. Not because you've reached an understanding or a consensus.
No, it ends because you've run out of road.
Yeah.
The two parties just don't have any common ground left to stand on.
It's like one person is trying to argue about the weather patterns for the whole country.
And the other person is saying, but it rained on my head right here yesterday.
Exactly. One is talking about external reality, the other about their own internal history. And they just talk past each other.
And if you start looking for it, you see this reliance on personal experience everywhere. It's not just in arguments on the internet. It dictates the foundation of our entire worldview.
In what way?
Well, we construct these huge beliefs from it. We come to believe we understand the nature of life itself just because we've suffered, or we think we understand all of humanity because one person betrayed us.
Or we're certain we know how society works because we've been treated unjustly.
Precisely. And those conclusions, they feel so satisfying, they feel neat, they tie up all the messy, painful events of the past into a clean, understandable story.
And because it feels so good to have that story, we almost never question it.
Right. Which brings us to the hard question, the real mission of this deep dive.
What gives my experience such overwhelming authority? What allows it to shape my beliefs, my judgments, my entire worldview? To the point where it can just overshadow objective data or a really well-reasoned argument.
It's not the facts that grant the authority, is it? It's the feeling. It's the pain, the memory, that gut-level certainty of, I was there.
So our mission is to explore why that instinct is so powerful. And this is the critical part, how that reliance, which is totally understandable,
Just like we understand them.
can actually end up limiting our own future, how it can box us in and kill our curiosity.
And we should probably start with a bit of, let's call it philosophical caution. We're leaning on existentialism here a bit.
Right, and existentialism isn't here to deny the experience. The pain was real, the event happened. That's not up for debate.
No, but it is profoundly cautious about making the next leap, about equating that one experience with some kind of ultimate universal truth. So why that caution?
Because the experience is never pure. It's never delivered to us raw.
It's always filtered, always processed by our own minds. It has to pass through the deep filters of our own fears, our hopes, our past traumas, and of course the ever-present needs of the ego.
So it's a story we tell ourselves about a real event.
Exactly. And it's the story, not the raw event, that becomes the source of that absolute conviction.
It makes me think about those moments. When you meet someone who speaks about the world with this unwavering certainty, they seem to have everything and everyone figured out, all neatly categorized.
And if you dig down and ask them, how are you so sure?
The ultimate answer isn't a logical proof. It's never a set of facts.
It's always, simply, I have lived through enough to know.
And that's our starting point. What is really going on in that moment?
I think we have to handle this impulse carefully because it's such a deeply human moment. When someone speaks with that absolute conviction and their only basis is I have lived through it, that statement is doing more work than just presenting evidence.
What do you mean?
It becomes, in a way, evidence of their own existence. It's an affirmation of the self in what often feels like a very confusing and chaotic world.
That connects directly to this incredibly powerful human need for meaning, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Think about it. If I suffered that much, if I endured years of struggle or a moment of profound soul-crushing pain,
It cannot be meaningless.
it can't. Because if it was just a random, pointless event, then what was my endurance for? It was wasted. So therefore, the pain must say something definitive. It must mean something important about the world.
That reasoning becomes like essential for my own self-worth. It props me up.
And that is the very core of what the sources call the existential paradox. We're relying on our experience, not just to learn about the outside world, not just to catalog facts about other people.
We're using it primarily to avoid something else.
We're using it to avoid doubting the meaning of the suffering we've already endured.
Yeah.
The suffering itself becomes the validation for the conclusion. It has to.
Wow. Okay, so that implication that my pain might have been random, might have been meaningless, that has to be why this belief system is so fiercely, so aggressively defended.
Of course. If the conclusion I drew from my pain, say the conclusion that all people in authority are corrupt, if that's shown to be flawed or too simplistic,
Then the entire narrative of the self that I built to survive that struggle, it starts to crumble.
it's immediately shaken to its core. It implies my sacrifices were for nothing, or worse, that the lessons I learned to survive are actually wrong. And for the ego, that is just terrifying.
The alternative is just too much to bear. The idea that the pain was just random and carries no grand universal lesson, it's intolerable.
So the brain makes a choice. It chooses a definitive conclusion, even a really pessimistic one, over chaotic uncertainty. Any conclusion is better than no conclusion, because a conclusion provides psychological structure.
So when someone comes along with a counter-argument, even a gentle one, suggesting maybe my worldview is a bit too broad, I don't just feel like my intellect is being challenged.
You feel existentially threatened.
Yeah.
It feels like someone is questioning the very purpose of your deepest wounds.
Okay, this is where we need to bring in that other perspective. The cold, clear insight of Stoicism.
Right, because Stoicism creates a crucial distinction. It doesn't tell you to deny what happened or pretend you didn't feel pain.
It's not about suppression.
Not at all. It simply reminds you that your experience tells you one thing with perfect accuracy: how you felt. It documents your internal reaction, your impressions, your personal history. That's it.
But, and this is the key, it does not necessarily tell you how the world operates objectively.
And that's the line, the razor's edge.
That line between how I felt and how the world actually works it feels almost impossible to hold on to when the emotions are really intense. How does Stoicism help us even see that line, let alone hold it?
It focuses our attention on our automatic impulse to project, to generalize. Let's use a simple example. You were severely let down by a friend who broke a major promise.
Oh, yeah.
The external reality is this: one person broke one promise on one specific day. That's the fact. Your internal experience, though, is, well, it's crushing disappointment, a feeling of betrayal, maybe a flash of white-hot anger.
Right, it's a huge emotional event.
And the danger is in allowing the sheer intensity of that internal event to immediately become an objective, universal fact about the world. You leap from "I feel betrayed" to
And my friends will eventually let me down, or even nobody can ever truly be trusted.
there it is. The strength of the emotion acts like a cognitive shortcut. It makes that huge, sweeping conclusion feel like it's just as real as the initial pain. It feels like evidence of a universal law.
So the danger is that the internal feeling, when it's strong enough, it becomes the external fact in our own minds. We mistake our emotional reaction for a global assessment of reality.
That is precisely it. And our sources really hammered this point about internal survival. When you're in a moment of deep vulnerability, you clutch on to your experience because it feels like the only thing that proves you're not invisible.
If you go through something terrible alone, your experience is the last undeniable witness to your own pain.
It is, and this is critical to understanding why the defense is so strong later on. When someone challenges a conclusion you've built on that pain, even if they gently suggest, well, maybe that system isn't always rigged.
You don't just hear a nuanced counter-argument.
No, what you hear is, perhaps the pain you endured was for nothing and you learned the wrong lesson from it. And that immediately elevates the entire conversation. It stops into disagreement.
And becomes a matter of internal survival.
It's no longer about finding the truth together. It's about preserving the self, preserving the narrative that holds you together.
So the mechanism that freezes the story in place, it's not intellectual stubbornness. It's not just someone being difficult.
No, it's a primal defensive response.
Yeah.
And it's rooted in the deep existential fear that we suffered for nothing.
Which explains so much. And I think it's the perfect bridge to talking about the deeper psychological and even evolutionary roots of why we do this. I think it's really important to stress this again. We are not genetically designed to be perfectly rational computers. This heavy reliance on our subjective experience isn't some modern moral failing.
No, it's a fundamental design feature. It's, a necessary result of millions of years of evolution, which was then shaped by our psychology, and now it's being reinforced by our social context.
Let's start with the evolutionary part, the primitive brain.
Right. Think about the ancestral environment. Before we had statistics or big data or the scientific method, there was only one tool you had for making life or death decisions.
Your own personal history.
Yeah.
Your memory.
That's it. If you ate a specific kind of red berry and you immediately got violently ill, your brain didn't need to consult a peer-reviewed study on berry toxicology.
No, it needed that one painful, searing memory to issue an immediate reflexive command.
Never eat that red berry again, period.
So personal experience wasn't just a survival tool, it was. It was the only survival tool available for a very, very long time.
And our brains are still, in many ways, running on that ancient operating system. That system was never designed to, first and foremost, seek out abstract, objective, universal truth.
It was designed with one maximum priority: protect the story of me surviving until tomorrow.
Which brings us to the first big psychological root. And it's a real conflict in the modern mind. We can call it the emotion override.
Okay, what's that?
It's the simple fact that any experience attached to strong emotions, pain, fear, humiliation, that feeling of existential threat, it gets automatically tagged in your brain as high priority information.
And it gets prioritized over
what? Over abstract, rational arguments. A cold number on a chart doesn't make your stomach drop. A complex economic model doesn't generate fear. But a specific memory of being fired or being ridiculed in front of your peers.
It does. It's visceral.
It is. The brain is engineered for speed and survival, not for intellectual nuance. It learns those painful, emotion-heavy memories fast and deep. It embeds them into our subconscious reflexes.
So the brain isn't asking, is this data point universally accurate for all 7 billion people on Earth?
No. The brain is asking a much simpler question. Is this memory relevant to keeping me safe right now?
And that instinct, which was crucial for self-defense back on the savannah, is now being dangerously misapplied to things like, modern social complexity or politics or economics.
And that misapplication leads us right to the second, much more complex root. The quest for order and anti-meaninglessness.
The fight against randomness.
Exactly. A profoundly painful experience, whether it's trauma or just a severe disappointment. It doesn't just hurt you. It rips a hole in your sense of control over your own life.
It forces that terrifying question. Why did this happen to me? Is the world just random and dangerous?
And we resist that idea of meaninglessness with everything we have. Because randomness implies chaos. And chaos implies a total loss of control.
So if the answer is just bad luck, that's too scary to live with.
It is. So to cope with that chaotic feeling, we instantly assign a sufficiently grand, definitive meaning to the experience. We have to, so that it doesn't feel like just some random accident that we had to endure for no reason.
We see this play out all the time. The brain constructs these big, sweeping conclusions that give us a stable framework, even if that framework is really dark and pessimistic.
Give me an example.
I was severely hurt by one partner, therefore all human relationships are inherently transactional and dangerous.
Or, I was denied a promotion even though I was the most competent person, so the entire system is fundamentally racist or misogynistic.
Okay, I have to push back there for a second, because that last point is tricky. Doesn't that risk minimizing real, verifiable, systemic injustice? If a whole group of people are saying, we have experienced this systemically, and we come back with, oh, that's just your psychological drug against meaninglessness, aren't we just gaslighting them?
That is a crucial distinction, and the sources are very careful here. We are not in any way denying the reality of systemic injustice. That is often an external verifiable truth that requires objective data and, collective action. What we are analyzing here is the internal psychological process of the individual who is responding to that external truth. The system may be unjust, that's the external fact, but the individual's internal conclusion.
Such as?
Since the system is unjust, I will never try again, and everyone who succeeds within it is my enemy. That is a psychological construction. It's a coping mechanism. It's choosing the comfort of certainty over the difficulty of open inquiry.
Ah, I see. So the external fact can be very real, but the internal conclusion we draw from it is tailored for our own psychological stability. And in the process, we often sacrifice our future agency. The certainty we get isn't objective truth, it's a kind of psychological shelter.
Exactly. These conclusions, they sound like these grand, objective assessments of the world. But more often than not, they are deep-seated psychological anchors designed to protect us from the feeling of meaninglessness. They restore a sense of order, even if the order they create is rigid, pessimistic, and ultimately very limiting.
That really clarifies the internal side of it. But of course, this isn't all just happening inside our own heads. The world around us reinforces this constantly.
Which brings us to the third root, the culture of narrative elevation.
We are living in a social environment that is it's drenched in this idea. Social media, identity politics, it's all constantly emphasizing. Your experience is your truth.
No one can invalidate your feelings.
And the sources are quick to acknowledge this movement started with a very necessary and justified motive. It was about protecting voices that had been historically marginalized or silenced. It was a way to fight back against being gaslit or dismissed by dominant narratives.
But here's the critical twist we have to look at. When you push that idea to its absolute extreme, experience stops being the starting point for a dialogue.
The evidence to be analyzed.
That it instantly becomes the end point, the conclusion that cannot be debated.
So if experience is treated as the final unchallengeable word, then any attempt to question it. It's not seen as a search for clarity.
No, it becomes synonymous with being insensitive, with denying the person's reality, or with being actively dismissive of their struggle.
So society, in this big effort to promote empathy, has accidentally trained us to equate the emotional force of an event with its ultimate, universal, unchallengeable truth.
You see the dynamic it creates. It creates a kind of moral hierarchy. The person who has suffered more, or the person who can describe their pain in the most compelling way, automatically holds the highest truth in the room, regardless of any objective data.
It stops being about what is true and starts being about who has the moral authority that has been granted to them by their pain.
And that ties right into the fourth root, which I think speaks so directly to our modern condition, identity anchor in collective loneliness.
We live in a pretty fragmented world. Trust in major systems, the media, institutions, even our shared historical stories, it's at a desperate low.
In that kind of climate, with all that suspicion, personal pain is often the last, unshakable certainty a person feels they have.
Right. I might doubt what the experts are telling me. I might doubt the news, but I cannot doubt the feeling that crushed my chest for 3 years. I can't doubt the memory of my own isolation.
So that subjective experience becomes a crucial anchor of identity. It's a fixed point in a relativistic, confusing universe. It says, I am the one who went through this, and that event defined who I am.
It's proof that I exist, that I endured, and that I now possess a kind of knowledge that no one else can have.
And therefore, when someone challenges that experience-based conclusion, it's not just felt as a challenge to a fact, it's felt as a direct attack on the self. The one thing you still feel certain about in a world of uncertainty.
In that context, the belief in your subjective experience, it stops being about gaining knowledge about the world.
And it transforms entirely into a desperate act of ego defense. It's about securing a fragile sense of self in what feels like a deeply confusing, post-truth world.
This psychological setup, it really clarifies why the conversation can shift so quickly and sometimes so violently from a shared search for truth to just entrenched territorial defense.
Okay, so once that personal experience gets successfully elevated to this absolute status, as the ultimate evidence, the moral authority, the anchor of identity, the entire goal of any conversation shifts.
Right, the dialogue moves away from a shared inquiry, from what is truly happening here.
And it moves directly into outright territorial defense. What right do you have to touch what I have lived through?
The experience isn't a data point anymore, it's territory. And it has to be protected at all costs.
And protecting that territory requires a specific set of very powerful, often subconscious, cognitive, and emotional mechanisms. These are the things that freeze the narrative in place.
Let's walk through them. What's the first one?
The first, and I would argue the most potent, is mechanism 1, legitimizing emotion as truth.
Okay, break that down.
Emotions are just signals. They tell us how we reacted to a situation. They're a report on our internal state. But when the narrative of the experience gets elevated like this, the raw emotion itself gets converted into the final, unchallengeable conclusion.
Can you give me a real-world example of that in action?
Sure. Think about someone who felt deep shame and dismissal after they tried to negotiate a raise in a really competitive workplace. The event happened. Their reaction shame, feeling small, was visceral. The conclusion they then legitimize is, I felt dismissed. Therefore, society is structured to dismiss people like me. The emotional signal, that feeling of shame, is now presented as the structural truth of the entire world.
And the core problem there is that the shame they felt becomes the protective armor for the conclusion they drew?
Exactly. And that belief is incredibly hard to shift because it's not being guarded by faulty logic, which you could argue with. It's being guarded by the deep, primal fear of re-experiencing that painful feeling of shame and rejection.
The emotion is being used to close the question, not to prompt a deeper analysis of, say, negotiation tactics or that specific workplace's culture.
Precisely, which leads to the second mechanism, which is just. It's everywhere in modern discourse. Mechanism 2, generalization from a single slice, false totality.
We take one small piece and assume it's the whole pie.
That's a perfect way to put it. Our personal experience always happens in a highly specific context. Your age, your culture, your economic situation at that moment, your psychological state, the specific people involved. But we systematically forget all that specificity.
And we generalize wildly from that one single data point.
One abusive relationship proves that all intimate partnerships are inherently dangerous. One significant career failure proves that effort is inherently futile and pointless in every area of life.
The single slice of life, no matter how specific it was, is immediately projected outward and treated as a false totality.
And think about our political discourse. This mechanism is weaponized constantly. A single, highly visible, emotionally charged anecdote about a perceived injustice, say, one specific isolated police interaction.
It gets broadcast everywhere.
And it's instantly interpreted, at least within certain political bubbles, as the definitive total truth about the nature of all policing, the entire justice system, or even the whole opposing political party.
The goal isn't to understand the complexity of the system. It's to use that one slice to confirm the narrative your identity already holds.
And the existential warning here is so profound. Confusing that one slice for the whole picture doesn't just misrepresent the outside world, it severely limits your own capacity for future action.
You voluntarily box yourself in. You start prejudging all future events based on that one moment from your past.
You're effectively robbing yourself of any chance of being positively surprised by life ever again.
So, mechanism 3.
Mechanism 3 is the shield against uncertainty. The real world is, well, it's contradictory, it's messy, it's fundamentally ambiguous.
And that's uncomfortable.
It's psychologically demanding to exist in that state of, I don't fully understand this. Personal experience, on the other hand, offers immediate clarity. It has a picture, it has an emotion, it has a simple story. There was a villain, a victim, and a lesson was learned.
So our faith in the certainty of that personal story lets us bypass the deep discomfort of ambiguity.
Exactly. It lets us avoid the hard work of having to reopen our deeply held, closed beliefs and admit that our past suffering, while absolutely real, might not be enough to explain the entire operation of the world or the totality of human nature.
That leads to what seems like the deepest trap of all, mechanism 4.
Merging experience and identity. This is arguably the deepest existential trap. When we fully internalize our trauma, when we start saying, I am the survivor of that tragedy, or I am the person who was grievously harmed, the experience isn't something that happened to you anymore.
No, it is you. The experience is the self.
And so any kind of rational inquiry or critical debate requires separating that historical event from your current identity.
But if someone challenges my conclusion, I feel like they're challenging my very identity, the foundation that helped me survive in the first place. The sources call that an ontological threat.
It feels like you're risking the loss of the entire structure that helped you survive. So dialogue becomes impossible. The argument is no longer perceived as a search for truth.
It's perceived as an active attempt to dismantle the protective self that you built around your pain.
Which naturally leads to fragmentation. And that's mechanism 5, blocking alternative experiences.
This is the use of that statement, if you haven't been through it, you have no right to speak.
Right. And this may be intended as a way to protect vulnerable voices, but its operational effect is a severe systemic closure.
It just shuts the door.
It fundamentally shuts the door on learning, on shared wisdom, on any kind of communal growth. It guarantees that everyone just stands in their own isolated experiential territory and calls that territory the singular truth.
It's intellectual self-isolation.
Which inevitably leads to social loneliness.
Let's get really concrete with this closure idea. The sources use an example of a worker who suffered genuine, profound workplace injustice. They were oppressed, ignored, treated unfairly. That pain is real and validated.
But then you watch how mechanism 6 takes hold, and that's justified exhaustion. Over time, that genuine old experience captures their entire field of vision.
So every new job application, every new workplace, every single piece of constructive feedback,
Even just a standard request from a manager.
it all gets immediately filtered through that dense, dark lens of the old oppression.
The pain itself formalizes their exhaustion. You hear these statements like, I've been dealing with this for 20 years, I know how this world is.
Or I've experienced enough injustice to last a lifetime. These sound like declarations of superior wisdom.
But they're cloaked. They're really a plea for rest. Formalized exhaustion, cloaked as wisdom.
So when that tiredness is successfully framed as the ultimate truth, the belief that I am too wise and too weary to listen or learn anymore,
Learning stops completely. And the tragic irony is that the old experience, which was so vital for their initial survival, no longer helps them live a fuller life in the present.
it does the opposite.
Actively restricts them. It forces them to see every single sunrise through the prism of yesterday's injury.
They stop navigating the world based on its current reality. They start navigating based on the trauma that's been stored in their psychological GPS. So if we just let these mechanisms run on autopilot, unchallenged, the result isn't some big, spectacular failure. It's a quiet, non-dramatic, but profound contraction of one's internal life.
And critically, a slow, silent erosion of freedom itself.
You're still physically living, but the world inside you has shrunk down to the size of your most painful memory.
The first major impact of this is on the framing of the capacity to understand. When you're absolutely convinced that your experience has said it all, true, deep listening just ends. It has to. The conclusion is preemptive.
So you're not seeking out new information to explore or to learn anymore.
No, you're only seeking it out to reinforce the existing, established personal story.
This is that moment of total closure. If new data comes in and it matches your story, you nod and say, see, I knew it all along.
And if it contradicts your story, you just discard it instantly. Well, you haven't been through what I've been through, so your data is irrelevant to me.
The external world stops being a place of discovery. It just becomes a collection of evidence to support the narrative you've already written.
Existentially, the sources define this as living in recollection rather than living in the present moment.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Think of it like you're driving a car, but you're only looking in the rearview mirror. You're constantly remembering the past, the terrain you've already crossed, the accidents you barely avoided, and you're using that memory to dictate the direction and the speed of your movement right now.
So you're no longer reacting to the road that's actually in front of you.
You're reacting to the road that's behind you.
Wow, that's an incredibly clear nail. This you're not just remembering the past, you are actively allowing the past to dictate the meaning and the limits of everything that is happening to you right now. You're effectively blinding yourself to new possibilities.
And that brings us to impact 2, the hardening of identity. When your experience fuses so completely with your identity, when you adopt that rigid statement, this is who I am now, you lose all your flexibility.
And any kind of change becomes deeply threatening. Why is that?
Because it forces an impossible binary choice. If I change my mind about the world, if I decide, say, that maybe not all people are malicious after all, then the rigid identity I built on that pain has to shatter.
You have to face the terrifying prospect of dismantling the very foundation that was built on your past suffering.
And the ego just demands certainty. It says, either the world is wrong and must conform to my story, or I have to go through the painful process of rebuilding my entire self.
So most people choose to believe the world is wrong.
It's the easier path.
Yeah.
This leads to impact 3, which is rationalized isolation.
Okay.
The belief that only those who have been through exactly what I have can possibly understand me. Well, it very quickly shrinks your inner circle down to basically nothing.
And then the loneliness stops being a sadness that you could potentially overcome through human connection.
And it becomes, instead, a validation of your core conclusion.
See, I told you, I'm fundamentally different. No one gets me because no one has endured this specific thing.
Exactly. The experience stops being a bridge that could connect you to the universally shared parts of the human condition, suffering, joy, endurance. And instead, it becomes a fortified wall that defines you through exclusion.
The fourth impact you mentioned is the loss of tolerance for ambiguity. A trauma-driven conclusion needs the world to be simple. It needs clear villains and clear victims. It needs easy rules.
But the real world is, well, it's none of those things. It's messy, it's contradictory, it's often highly, highly nuanced.
So when reality refuses to conform to that simple narrative, when a person you've labeled a villain does something kind, or a supposed ally disappoints you.
That intolerance for ambiguity forces a rapid, premature closing of the question. You have to resolve the contradiction immediately.
So you quickly label the kind act as some form of manipulation, or you decide that disappointment is proof of universal malice.
You do whatever it takes to maintain the clarity of that old, established narrative.
And this impulse is motivated by that original fear of losing control that the old experience triggered. The tragic paradox is that you cling to your experience to avoid more pain, but that very certainty is what prevents you from daring to live openly in the present.
Because living openly requires accepting ambiguity.
Which leads directly to the core consequence we have to understand. Impact 5, the narrowing of internal freedom.
This is it. True freedom is not the ability to think whatever you want. It's the psychological capacity to question your own core beliefs without collapsing your sense of self.
And when an experience is deemed to be unquestionable truth, that freedom it vanishes.
It's replaced by automatism. Your behavior is dictated by old wounds, by emotional reflexes based on memory. You're just living inside a perpetually closed narrative.
You become a prisoner of your own history.
That's the most difficult truth of this whole matter. We often believe we're protecting ourselves, but in reality, we are choosing restriction. We are choosing a smaller life.
You know, I can illustrate this with something I've realized about myself based on some of the material in these sources. There was a time when I really believed I had seen through people because of some painful past trauma, specifically around broken trust. And that belief that I knew the dark truth about human nature, it provided this perverse but very powerful sense of safety. I felt like I couldn't be surprised again. I couldn't be hurt in the same way.
So how did that feeling of safety end up restricting you?
It was like an impenetrable filter. It simultaneously blocked me from ever being surprised by anything genuinely positive or new in human connection. I found myself constantly interpreting generosity as a form of manipulation, or seeing small mistakes as proof of malicious intent.
Everything had to be forced through that old restrictive lens.
Exactly. I was missing out on what was possible in the present, because the cost of doubting what I had suffered, the potential risk of being hurt again, was just deemed too high. My fear had disguised itself as wisdom.
And that leads to the final and perhaps the deepest consequence of all this, the freezing of meaning.
What do you mean by that?
If your past experience is fully explained and closed off the entire world for you, then life loses its open-ended questions. It loses its curiosity. It loses its potential for genuine discovery.
The experience has already declared the final answer.
And all that's left is to go around collecting evidence that confirms that answer. You lose the simple human joy of being surprised. So after absorbing all of that, the weight of the paradox, the psychological traps, this idea of contracting freedom, there's a natural protective reflex that the listener is probably feeling right now. And we have to address it head on.
Which is?
If I can't trust my own experience, the one thing that feels truly and completely mine, what on earth can I trust?
And that question isn't just valid, it's essential. And it speaks directly to our current social context. We're all operating in a world that's defined by a widespread, and I think arguably justified, erosion of trust.
A huge erosion of trust. Trust in major institutions, trust in the media, trust in experts. There's skepticism about data, which we know can be manipulated or cherry-picked.
So in that incredibly volatile landscape, your personal experience becomes the last untakeawayable fortress.
It becomes a moral anchor. You might logically doubt what the external world is telling you, but you struggle mightily to doubt the painful memory that gripped your chest for years.
It gets elevated not because it's perfect, but because everything else seems suspect or unreliable or corrupted.
Right. So the structure of modern society, by failing to provide these reliable external foundations for truth, inadvertently forces people to retreat inward. It makes their personal pain the ultimate measure of both moral and factual reality.
It's a self-defense mechanism that's born out of a much larger structural distrust.
And this ties into the second structural trap we're facing, the narrative trap. We live in an age where the personal, compelling story holds exponentially more power than a reasoned argument or a dense data set.
Oh, absolutely. Someone sharing a story of profound pain can sway millions of people without ever needing to provide further proof or discernment or critical analysis.
And this empowerment of the personal narrative, while it was necessary for giving a voice to the previously silent, often leads to a very dangerous implicit lesson.
Which is,
The more painful or traumatic the experience, the less it needs to be questioned or analyzed. It becomes closed evidence simply because of its emotional weight.
the existential insight here would urge caution, right?
Extreme caution. Pain does not automatically generate truth. It generates a demand for recognition, for validation, and for moral urgency. But our society has completely conflated those two concepts.
So if anyone even attempts to question the narrative, they're immediately labeled as insensitive or as denying the reality of suffering.
Or as participating in the oppressive structure that caused the pain in the first place.
And then there's that subtle confusion between having a genuine moral authority and having a kind of psychological exemption. That's the third structural issue.
Right. Many people seem to believe that if you've suffered enough, you're granted the exemption of suffering. You get the right to stop listening to other views, to stop learning, to stop accommodating any ambiguity.
You hear the pleas all the time. I'm tired of educating people.
I've been hurt enough, or don't try to teach me about reality, I live it.
And these statements, they sound like declarations of superior knowledge or moral standing, but at a deeper level.
They're just pleas for rest. Rest from intellectual uncertainty and from the taxing demands of being open to change. Personal experience offers that immediate stopping point. No more learning, no more challenging questions, no more need to open up the self.
Which brings us back to the listener's core internal resistance. If I constantly doubt my experience, won't I just harm myself further? Won't I risk repeating the same mistakes over and over?
And that is the crucial pivot point. This is where Stoicism offers the necessary reframing.
Okay.
Doubting the conclusion you drew from your experience is not the same thing as denying the original pain or the validity of the event itself.
That's a critical distinction.
The Stoics ask us not to take that one specific time-bound experience and turn it into a permanent universal law that has to govern all of our future events.
So the experience has absolute authority over what hurt you in that specific moment, and that has to be respected.
It does. But it does not have the authority to decide what is always true about the nature of the world in every possible future circumstance.
If you let it dictate that universal law, you are using the past to legislate the future. You are choosing to believe that tomorrow must be exactly like yesterday.
And the final structural challenge we're facing is the reward of certainty. Our society, our media, our social algorithms, it heavily rewards certainty. And it often mistakes that certainty for wisdom.
The person who speaks with unwavering conviction based on their lived truth, they spread their message effectively, they attract followers.
While the person who shows uncertainty, the person who says, I don't know the answer yet, or maybe I'm wrong, I need to listen further, that's often viewed as weakness or intellectual softness.
Uncertainty doesn't trend well. It doesn't feel emotionally satisfying.
So the existential challenge to all this structural pressure is a simple but profound question we have to ask ourselves, probably daily. Are you using your hard-won experience to live deeper and more cautiously? Or are you using it to close off the world, to make yourself impervious to any new input?
I think the point of this whole deep dive is not to force anyone to abandon what they've lived through.
Not at all.
It's an invitation to place that experience in its correct, humble, and useful position, alongside reason, alongside healthy doubt, and alongside the continuous capacity to listen.
So if you were hoping for some gentle, easy three-step formula to dismantle these deep psychological mechanisms, you're probably going to be disappointed.
This isn't a life hack.
No. The path to internal freedom requires deliberate, difficult, and sustained work. It demands that we take clear, active responsibility for how we choose to believe the things we believe. It's about moving from automatism to conscious choice.
But the insights from existentialism and Stoicism do offer some very precise, actionable strategies, ways to exercise this internal supervision and push back against the inertia of our emotional history.
Let's start with strategy 1, the foundation. Separate event from interpretation. This is the first crucial, non-negotiable step. You have to create a clear distinction in your mind
Between what?
between the experience, what factually happened, which is undeniable, my business partner stole money from me, and the conclusion, what you choose to believe about it afterward. Therefore, all people are fundamentally corrupt, and entrepreneurship is a scam.
We fuse those two layers together completely. We do it to create that certainty we were talking about.
And Stoicism requires us to take absolute responsibility for that second layer, the conclusion, because that's the only part of the equation we currently have any control over. We don't control the past event, but we control the interpretation that's going to govern our future.
If you're going to make a universal claim about all of humanity based on one event, you have to own that generalization. The pain is real, but the blanket judgment is a choice you're making.
Right. This leads to strategy 2. Slow down the I know.
What do you mean by that?
When an issue or a person or a news headline triggers that reflex response, that immediate confident declaration of, oh, I know how this goes because it touches a deep old wound, you must pause.
You don't deny the feeling.
No, don't deny the immediate rush of feeling. Acknowledge it. And then ask a small, difficult, and very specific question. Is this current situation truly objectively similar to my past experience, or am I actively forcing it into that old narrative structure to avoid the effort of analyzing something new?
That pause, even if it's just for a few seconds, that's where the freedom is. It reduces the automatism.
Internal freedom is gained in those brief moments where you interrupt the reflex. If the current situation is 90% different from your past, but your emotional response is 100% familiar, that is the sign that the past is colonizing the present.
Okay, strategy 3, existential sizing. Allow your experience to be a perspective, not the totality. This one is really hard, I think, because psychologically we fear that if we admit our experience is only partial, it somehow diminishes the pain we suffered.
But the sources are so clear on this. Admitting its partiality does not diminish the pain one bit. It places the pain in its correct functional size. Your experience is not a law of the universe. It is a profound lesson about you and that specific situation.
So its true meaning is found in how it shaped me, not in how much it explains the entire human race or the cosmos.
Precisely. Next, strategy 4, monitor defensive reactions. This one requires intense self-observation. When someone presents a view that contradicts your trauma-based conclusion, just observe your internal state.
What am I looking for?
Do you feel instant annoyance, rush of denial, a fierce desire to shut down the conversation, or to categorize the other speaker as naive or malicious?
If I feel that surge of protective, high-activation emotion,
It is almost certainly not a sign that the other person is fundamentally wrong. It is a sign that your past experience is currently being mobilized for ego defense. It's a response based on fear, not a rational assessment of their argument.
Stoicism would demand that I recognize when fear, not reason, is driving my analysis. That feeling is like a warning flag that says, old narrative under attack.
Exactly. Strategy 5, embrace insufficiency. This is the point that very few people like to admit. You have to accept that your experience might be insufficient, that it is simply not enough to make sweeping conclusions about an entire group of people or the whole of society, or to close all the relevant questions about a complex topic.
And that's not intellectual weakness or defeat.
It's profound intellectual honesty. Existentialism built a meaningful life on the capacity to live with ambiguity, with not knowing, without allowing that ambiguity to trigger an emotional collapse. If you draw conclusions about all of humanity based on the 20 people you've met, you are, by definition, embracing insufficiency.
Strategy 6, the scars of honesty. We often cling to our certainty because we can't bear to doubt the conclusion that helped us get back on our feet after we were knocked down.
It takes serious courage to admit that an experience, while valid and incredibly helpful for your survival at the time, might be both right and insufficient for you now. And that deep, honest admission is what reduces the defensive posture and allows true listening to finally occur.
Strategy 7 is pure stoic control. Distinguish between what you control and what you don't.
You don't control the fact that the experience happened. You don't fully control how the external world operates. But you have absolute control over the use case for that experience.
Whether it becomes a guiding compass for caution,
Or an internal prison that restricts all of your future choices.
and that choice is made by subjecting the experience and the conclusions you drew from it to the supervision of reason, rather than just letting it run on emotional reflex. Reason has to ask, does this conclusion still serve my best interest in seeking truth and growth?
And finally, a very practical one. Strategy 8. Practice saying, maybe I don't fully understand.
That phrase is a mechanism of humility and release.
When you say it, you are not shrinking yourself. You are opening up space. It is the verbal doorway to a wider life. And it's the necessary antidote to the pervasive belief that we have to be an expert in everything just because we've endured pain.
I think we really need to reiterate here that the goal is not some kind of philosophical self-destruction. We are not arguing that you should abandon or disregard your lived experience.
No one can live that way, and no one has the right to demand that of you. Your history is critical information.
But the true promised land of internal freedom, it doesn't lie in ignoring your history.
It lies in stopping your experience from serving as the sole, exclusive spokesperson for truth and reason and possibility in your life.
In this freer state, the experience is retained. You haven't thrown it out. But it no longer sits on the absolute throne of authority, demanding silence from every other source of information.
It sits down humbly, powerfully, next to reason, next to objective data, next to the capacity for doubt, and, most importantly, next to the capacity to listen to contradiction.
The existential challenge to you, the listener, is always the litmus test for this newfound freedom.
Are you using your experience to open the world? To seek self-awareness about your own fears and vulnerabilities, and to know where caution is genuinely needed? If you are, then it's serving its right, useful role.
But if that experience consistently kills your curiosity, ends all questioning, and blocks you from hearing anything contrary, if it actively restricts your ability to grow, then it has profoundly overreached its authority.
It has become a tyrannical ruler of your internal life.
And the true peace that comes from doing this work is subtle, but it's profound. It's not that you suddenly become immune to pain.
It's that you no longer have to turn your pain into a rigid, universal ideology just to justify the suffering you've endured. You stop needing to believe that everyone is like that just to validate the effort of your own endurance.
You stop needing to freeze people or society or even yourself into these static, predictable, and often pessimistic categories just to make your painful past feel rational or necessary.
There's a quiet confidence that comes from allowing your experience to be a crucial part of your story, but not the entire plotline.
The highest level of maturity and of intellectual honesty is the capacity to say, this is what I have lived through, and it was hard, and it shaped me.
Followed by that difficult but liberating admission, but I am still learning.
And Stoic freedom is built exactly on that capacity, the ability to question your own story, to challenge your deepest, most pain-protected assumptions without collapsing your sense of self into chaos.
So we want to leave you with one final provocative question to mull over. We'd encourage you to find some quiet time to really consider this and to allow the question to just linger in the discomfort of uncertainty.
If you stopped rushing to say, I know, every time something touched an old experience, if you allowed yourself to stay just a little bit longer in that zone of not yet sure, not yet closed.
What specific foundational belief are you currently holding on to, not because it is strictly universally true, but because you need it desperately to avoid confronting the possibility that your personal experience is only a part of the truth?
Until the next deep dive, keep questioning your frame.